Hey there. Today, we're taking a really focused look, actually. Just one source, but it acts as a kind of key, unlocking a unique perspective on a region just brimming with history and, well, deep meaning.
hmm
We're diving into a book titled Follow Me by Firas Salman.
That's right. And it's interesting, it's not just like a travelogue. This book positions itself more as a spiritual and historical guide. It seems specifically curated to lead someone through these really significant religious sites.
Okay.
Yeah, it offers a very structured way, I think, to understand the many, many layers of history and faith that are just embedded in the geography of this land.
Okay, right. Let's unpack this then. Our mission today is to explore what makes this book tick.
Hmm.
What's actually inside? What places does it prioritize?
hmm
And I guess crucially, what insights does it offer that are particularly valuable, especially if you're interested in pilgrimage or maybe just gaining a deeper understanding of this landscape where faith and history are so completely intertwined.
Well, the book lays out its exploration pretty intentionally. It divides the region into three main geographical areas: the Galilee, Samaria, and Judea,
Ah, okay.
which, that mirrors a pretty traditional way of understanding the land's geography and its history.
So it's structured almost like a journey, guiding you geographically through different territories.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, it literally takes you step by step. And within each of these big sections, the book dedicates specific chapters, or sometimes just pages, to individual locations. It details the important sites within them.
Right, yeah.
So, for instance, the Galilee section sort of sets the stage. That covers pages 10 to 35. Then you move geographically south, and Samaria takes you through pages 36 to 42.
Okay, shorter section there.
Yeah, much shorter. And then finally, the really extensive Judea section, that forms the bulk of the guide, spanning from page 43 all the way to page 115.
Wow.
So that weighting alone tells you quite a bit about where a significant focus lies, doesn't it?
Over 70 pages just for Judea. That's
Yeah.
that's fascinating in itself. What else does the book include to help you kind of navigate these places, especially given how complex some of those sites must be?
Yeah, exactly. And a critical feature the book seems to emphasize is the inclusion of maps. This guide isn't just text, it provides maps for various locations to really help orient the reader on the ground.
That makes sense.
And I think for anyone navigating these potentially complex historical sites, having a good visual aid is, well, it's essential, really.
Maps are absolutely vital for understanding the layout, aren't they?
Right.
Especially in ancient places. Which specific locations get this kind of detailed mapping within the book, does it say?
It does. The source material highlights several key locations with maps, which suggests these are points the author feels are particularly important to visualize. So you'll find maps for Nazareth attractions,
Yeah.
a dedicated section map specifically for the Church of the Annunciation,
Ah, interesting.
a map for the Sea of Galilee attractions, and also a map for Capernaum. Then, as you move south into Judea, there are illustrative maps of the city of Jerusalem itself.
Right? The whole city.
Yeah, across pages 65 to 67. And then, again, a section map for the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and another section map for the Church of the Nativity.
So the big churches get their own detailed maps.
Exactly. And the fact that these major churches have their own section maps is, I think, a key indicator of the book's focus. It really wants you to understand the internal geography of these significant buildings, not just where they sit on a city map.
That really underscores the depth the author's aiming for, doesn't it? Helping you navigate not just the cities, but the layers within the most important sites. And speaking of importance, the source material clearly puts significant weight on three churches in particular. It presents them almost as pillars of a pilgrimage.
Yes, these three definitely stand out: the Church of the Annunciation, the Church of the Nativity, and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. They're presented as absolutely central to Christian tradition and therefore really central to the journey the book outlines.
Okay, let's start with the Church of the Annunciation. The book places it early in the journey up in Galilee. What specific details does it offer about this site?
Right. So the Church of the Annunciation is located in Nazareth, and the book emphasizes Nazareth's utter importance among all Christians. It even delves a little into the name's origin, linking Nazareth to the Hebrew word Natzaret, meaning life.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and it notes the city is also known as the Pride of Galilee. Plus, it includes that specific section map for the church itself on page 13, which, would be crucial for understanding the different areas within that basilica complex.
So it's not just telling you where it is, but adding these layers of cultural, even linguistic context.
Yeah.
What about the Church of the Nativity? That one's, so central to the Christmas story.
Absolutely. The Church of the Nativity is in Bethlehem. The book explicitly connects it to the birthplace of Jesus, referencing the account in Luke 2, verses 1 to 7.
Okay.
And just like the Church of the Annunciation, it provides a dedicated section map for this church on page 89. The book also highlights Bethlehem's immense importance among Christians, and it gives a geographical reference, too, placing it on the southern slopes of the Judean mountains, about 10 kilometers south of Jerusalem. It really grounds that biblical narrative in the physical location.
Right, connecting the story to the actual ground. And finally, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This one always seems incredibly complex, historically and architecturally.
It is, yeah. And the book seems to acknowledge that complexity. It's located in Jerusalem, of course, and it's also referred to as the Church of the Resurrection in the source, specifically on page 61.
Okay, Church of the Resurrection. Got it.
Yeah. The book presents it as the site where Jesus was buried and resurrected. It even mentions the chamber of the angel inside the tomb of Jesus, and notes that the tomb itself is enclosed by the edicule, that 19th century shrine structure inside the rotunda.
Ah, right.
And the inclusion of that section map on page 71 is just vital here. I mean, navigating the Holy Sepulchre without a guide to its internal layout, with all its different chapels and the historically divided ownership, that would be incredibly challenging.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So the map really helps you understand how these pivotal sites, the traditional spot of the crucifixion, the burial, the resurrection, are all contained within this one, admittedly very layered building.
It sounds like the author chose these three churches almost as foundational points, not just for their biblical significance, but maybe because they represent distinct geographical regions and key moments in the narratives.
That seems right. And after anchoring the journey with these major sites, the book's journey extends, far beyond them. It guides you through a multitude of other locations, each with its own layers of historical and religious connection. It really fills out the picture of the land.
Okay, give us a few examples then, maybe from each region. What are some other compelling sites that the book brings to light?
Sure. So, starting back in the Galilee section, beyond Nazareth, the book takes you to places like Kafr Kana, often identified as the biblical Cana.
The wedding feast.
Exactly. The focus there is on the site known as the Wedding Church, linked to Jesus' first miracle of turning water into wine, referencing John chapter 2. It highlights how the book connects specific gospel events to these locations you can actually visit.
Right.
Then there's Tabgha, that's a significant area on the Sea of Galilee, and there the book points to sites like the Church of the Primacy of St. Peter and the Church of the Multiplication of the Loaves and Fish, again, tying physical places to these key biblical moments. The Mount and Church of the Beatitudes are also included, directly linking to the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5. It's almost like the book is inviting you to, walk through the gospel stories geographically.
That's a really powerful way to frame it, using the landscape itself as a backdrop for the narratives.
How does this continue as you move south into Samaria and then that vast section on Judea?
Well, the Samaria section, although it's shorter, it still highlights places with really deep historical and biblical resonance. Nablus is featured, for instance, a city with a history stretching back to 2000 BC.
Wow.
The book describes it as the High Land, and crucially, it points to Jacob's Well. That's the traditional site of the encounter between Jesus and the Samaritan woman, referencing John chapter 4.
Wow, Jacob's Well. Okay.
Yeah. And the book even notes Nablus's historical evolution from the Canaanite Decima to the Roman Neapolis. So it shows the book is layering that ancient history with the biblical narrative. Right. It's not just one layer. And then onto Judea, which we said is by far the largest section.
Right.
What kind of ground does it cover there, particularly in and around Jerusalem?
Yeah, Judea, covering over 70 pages, is understandably dominated by Jerusalem. And the book really delves into its incredible depth. It covers the Mount of Olives, extensively presented not just as like a viewpoint, but as the site of Jesus' ascension, according to Luke.
Okay.
The location of his prayer before betrayal, referenced in Matthew, and the traditional burial site of the Virgin Mary.
So multiple significant events tied to one location.
Exactly. Then it moves to Mount Zion, highlighting its significance as the location of King David's tomb. And it notes its high regard among Christians, especially its connection to Jesus' path to crucifixion, and also a site believed to be related to, like, end times events.
Right.
The book also makes sure to acknowledge Jerusalem's ancient roots, tracing its importance back to 2000 BC and its establishment as a political capital under King David. It covers a lot.
It really seems like the book is using the physical landscape to trace both biblical history and these deeper historical layers, which I suppose raises an important question. How does this comprehensive approach make the book particularly valuable for someone interested in pilgrimage? What unique perspective does it offer the pilgrim?
I think that's really the core value proposition here. The book doesn't just list sites. It actively directly connects the physical locations you can visit today to the biblical events, the historical context, and the traditional significance described in the source material.
So it's about making the connection.
Precisely. By using this book as a guide, you're not just seeing ancient stones. You're sort of invited to trace the steps of religious figures and engage with the narratives associated with those specific places. The author curates that experience.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure, like visiting Beit Sahar is explicitly linked to the shepherd's field and the announcement of Jesus' birth, referencing Luke chapter 2. Or a trip to Al-Izariah is connected directly to Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, referencing John chapter 11. Even ancient Jericho, near the Jordan River and Mount Temptation, it's included not just for its incredibly deep history going back to 8000 BC, apparently,
Right.
but also for its biblical connections, like the temptation of Jesus mentioned in Matthew chapter 4. The book provides that context from the source material, making the physical journey resonate on a deeper, perhaps more spiritual level. It helps you understand why these specific places, out of countless others, hold such immense importance for millions.
So what does this all kind of distill down to for someone considering making this journey, or maybe even just wanting to understand this region more deeply from a faith perspective?
Well, Firas Salman's book, Follow Me, it really appears to be designed as an indispensable companion for that. By clearly outlining the key sites, providing that historical and biblical context directly linked to the locations, and offering those crucial maps, it presents a highly structured yet meaningful way to approach a journey through these significant lands. It distills incredibly complex history, geography, and religious tradition into a format that feels accessible. It highlights the sites that are most central to the traditional pilgrimage experience, offering not just information, but maybe a lens through which to view the land and its stories.
So it helps connect the dots.
Exactly. It helps the reader connect those sometimes abstract narratives to the tangible, physical world you can actually walk through.
This deep dive into Follow Me really demonstrates the power of a well-structured guide, doesn't it? How it can unlock layers of meaning in a place. It covers vast historical and geographical ground, from those globally recognized major churches like the Annunciation, Nativity, and Holy Sepulchre,
The big three.
to lesser known perhaps, but still profoundly significant sites mentioned, like Kafr Khana, Tabgha, Nablus, Beit Sahar, Jericho, all presented as part of this continuous narrative through history and faith.
Yeah, it provides a clear, curated path through a region that's just absolutely saturated with stories and traditions. By drawing directly from the source material and connecting it right to the physical locations, the book illuminates the significance of each stop along the way. It really offers a focused, intentional look at the places most central to a spiritual journey through this land.
A truly comprehensive and, it seems, quite purposeful guide.
Yep.
It leaves you thinking about how, walking the physical landscape can actually deepen your understanding of ancient stories and beliefs. What aspect of this book's approach stands out most to you after exploring it like this?
What's particularly fascinating, I think, is how the book explicitly weaves together the physical act of visiting a place with the historical and spiritual narrative tied to it. It's not just a history book, and it's not just a travel guide. It really feels like an invitation to experience the convergence of the two. And it kind of raises an important question for anyone using it, doesn't it? How does the physical reality of being in a place like the Mount of Olives or standing by Jacob's well, guided by the context provided in this book, how does that actually transform your understanding of the stories you thought you already knew?